welcome back to the Brainstorm Hub podcast. Today we are going to talk about why in the history of Africa we haven't seen philosophers, scientists, discoverers, and mathematicians, yet the history of Africa has been existing for over hundreds of years. The evidence of the absence of African history, it does not show that Africa has no history. It simply shows that there is a particular group of people who preserved a certain history and perhaps managed to portray their history. If we could critically look at Ethiopia and Mali and Egypt at large, we could tell that Africa had history back then. So the question is, why haven't we seen these big philosophers? Salah and Boy, welcome.
Thank you so much. In my view, I think maybe we can look back in history of education of Africa. We can't say that we didn't have those philosophers or what, but they didn't show up. They didn't show them that their talents. Maybe if I can say that, they didn't show that we have those philosophers as well. And we can say even colonization has affected. We can see that it has affected these philosophers, because when we look at back, we can see that the Europeans are the one to bring the education in Africa, and they are the one who colonized the Africa. So I think those philosophers, we can't say that they were not exist, but we had a lot of philosophers in Egypt. We can see in the African countries, but because of those background, the history of Africa, especially in education, how they didn't care about them, and how they didn't make them known to the global. So this can affect the philosophers of Africa, and when we see those background of the colonization and what,
So thank you. As point of support to what Salia is talking about. So when you analyze the history of Africa, there is what Africans have discovered, and they have given their view regarding the scientists and the other doctrines like sociology and others. However, they are not used in the education. Talking on psychology, even in psychology, those fathers of psychology, there is Karl Marx, there is Thomas Aquinas. Those are the fathers of the sociology. However, they are there, but they are taught in the schools. However, they are not Africans, because for those who are Africans are not introduced in the education, and even the value which are they given in the education system, it is low. So analyzing that too, it is not that the African discoverers are not there, but they are there, but they are not given the value that they deserve to be having. That is my point.
Don't you see that this might be a question like why not Africans are not standing up and try to build or to rebuild or to come back with those philosophers which have lost and see what we can do on that?
Yeah, that is to what you was talking about the colonization. Mm-hmm. So the education system that we do have, even the legal system that we do have, those are the adopted system from the colonialists. So what we do rely on, I just adapted from them. So even the books that we use, those doctrines are adopted from those countries. That is the issue, which is still an effect of the colonization, which still impact our system.
There's something that is very ironic when it comes to the discovery of physical features in Africa. If we are to look at one of the longest rivers in Africa and in the world, which is River Nile, you will see in the text of European or in the Western scholarships, they will say that, for example, Dr. Baker discovered the River Nile, which in case it wasn't in the first place. And this is an indication to show that the colonialism actually had a huge and significant effect when it comes to the African history and also portraying these philosophers. Because why would you say that this Dr. Baker discovered River Nile when in actual sense There are people of Nilotics, they are there, living alongside the River Nile. There are Bantu living alongside the River Nile. If you go back to the source of River Nile, which is Lake Victoria, you could find out that there were people who were existing there before even the coming of the European. So I would say that there was a deliberate elimination of African history by the European, because Europeans actually possessing the mainstream of the world records, the mainstream of the world scholarships, and this one is affecting. Like Boyd added that it's not that the African history or African philosophers were not existing; they were existing, but because the Westerners or the European had this superiority of saying that, oh, we own the history or we own the scholarship of written doctrines and so on, they would say that we actually discovered this. And to make one of my latest point is that if you're also to go to the biblical history, you'll find out that Egypt, all the people talked about in the Bible, such as Jesus Christ, such as Jacob, such as Mary, such as Abraham, all these people went to Africa. Now you begin to ask yourself, okay, why did all these people go to Africa? The simple answer is there, that these people went to Africa, Egypt, to learn about these physical features and to learn about the history or to learn about the origin of humankind. So African history has been there, but still the question remains, why? So I would say that it's because of deliberate elimination of African history by the colonialism.
So as also again supported to what you was talking about, again there is what we as Africans we do give the value. So mostly because we are talking about the history of Africans, we as Africans we should be the one who are supporting our history. We should be the one telling our own story. However, even under analyzing the society, once you say that this statement was given by a British philosopher or what, and you compare it to the statement which should have been given by an African, if you compare the two, the most given value statement is the one of the British there. So even our understanding as African is still we are in colonialism. So we need also to change the understanding and start giving the value of our own story, our own writing, and we say that even though I'm African, I can also give the right statement.
I think it is still, they took it orally, why we should put it in written documents. It is still orally, that's the problem. When we look at the education system of Africa and the past and the history of it, we can see that they don't likely to put it in the written documents. They likely, showing the oral things. I think we Africans, as Boy was saying, we are the one to initiate. We are not emphasizing on how we can, build those philosophers to bring it back. And we are not saying that we don't even have them. We do have them. And how are we going to bring them back? Through education system. Through denying those colonials, because the mindset, when you look at the Africans, they still have the mindset of the colonization. So we should look at what we can do on that, and what we can achieve as Africans to be known, to come back, to bring those philosophers known. Just because they are still existing, they can't be there. I think maybe we can put it in the education system or everywhere. And I think the Africans, as you say, they are their own to make it known. So we have to be that. We have to have that capacity of being like, we can do this. We can, yeah.
So additional to that one, once you even though we are discussing about the history of Africans, it is a very crucial discussion here, because it is said that you cannot reach somewhere if you don't know where you are coming from. So we as Africans, if we intended to reach somewhere compared to where we are now, we needed to first analyze where we have come from. We needed to know our history. That is why we needed to share and tell the stories.
Well, actually, you've made a very crucial point in the subsequence to what Salah said, that we have to know where we come from. It's very, very important that apparently the current or the modern scientists in cooperation with the archaeologists, they have well discovered that Africa is the origin of humankind. And the archaeologists such as Luca actually is one of the oldest. And the world has been categorized into three, where we have Africa, we have Asia, and we have Europeans. So Africa has been the mother of humankind, followed by Asia, and then we come to Europe. So this one now can entail that Africa is not basically just a random picture we can just talk about. It's something broad and it's something huge to signify that Africa is actually the mother of humankind. It takes us back again to Ethiopia. Also, just recently here in Tanzania, where the oldest humankind was discovered by the same archaeologists. So you talked about our education system not to have been written. Well, that's true. This is where now we can open our eyes. Why is it that we haven't written our scholars rather than speaking it out? You see, even the European, the same history they have, they did not have that particular history. This history they have, they get it from Greek, from Roman, from Africa, and then they make that combination. So we basically have to write our own history as we speak, because everything is rooted in Africa. Everything is starting from Africa, and also recent data shows that Africa is the future of the universe. So we have to start writing our own history.
Yeah.
So why not can be like the African culture? Because you see Africans, they don't likely showing up. I can see that maybe in African culture, it can be also the problem of why those philosophers are not being seen or known. We shall look also in African culture of how African culture is being adopted. So the African culture is being adopted, but they don't want to show behind what the society want to see or what is real, because those philosophers are not being shown. Yeah, when you see those kind of mathematicians, whatever, they are not being seen. So we need those culture to be reviewed and be seen again, so we can see that can it be the root cause of this, so that those philosophers can be again known to the. Yeah.
To that one, that is why we needed to tell our story, because even analyzing this matter of, we have been hearing about the alcohols and what, in Africa, we have been having scientists since the starting point, because once you talk about the chemistry, you cannot tell me that in our traditions we have traditions of making those drinkings. But you say that it is not regarding to the matter of chemistry. It is chemistry. Because if you found that a person is there and he or she is able to take like those seeds and make it throughout to make the soda at the end or the drink at the end, that person, he or she is a chemistry. So you cannot tell me that we doesn't know those science and what. It is a matter of writing our own story. We need to take that from the practice and then we write it as the theory to be taught to our kids.
Well, we can say that this is all the colonization actually, which is still in mind, because Africans are still having that mindset of the colonization that Europeans are the best, they can do more than us. So that's why even when we do that thing, we don't feel comfortable of what we have done, or we don't feel comfortable that we are the one who have done that. When you mix those chemicals and you see like this is chemistry and this has been done with the Africans, but Africa are not still believing themselves. I think even we have to have that self-confidence of Africans. We have to know that we don't need that still. We don't still need that kind of colonization, which has been come to the minds of the Africans, So I think there must be the self-confidence of the Africans. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you saying to that. We need self-confidence and self-awareness, because And even it is interesting that we are the ones as young Africans initiating this kind of discussion to Africans, our fellow Africans, because we needed to be aware of this one. So it is very interesting that we are starting to this point so that every African, anywhere you are, you be aware that we are able to do anything, but it is where it starts from. So you need to first understand that you can do something in order to implement it.
Well, actually, you've made again a very important point, of which we African, we shall continuously complain that we do not have inventors, we do not have mathematicians or physicians. But the problem is one. The moment we talk about these problems, we have actually solved 60% of the problem. I would make it simple this way. When we critically look at the industrialization of Africa, you will see that all these medicines actually, they are made from the materials that are exploited from Africa. This is where now we African, we need to start thinking, oh, these materials are actually made out of our materials. For example, the phones, these electronics devices, they cannot cooperate without diamond, without copper. Where do they mine this? They mine them from DRC, they mine them from a country like Botswana and Zambia. So we African young people or African leaders need to start industrializing, and we utilize this our own materials, we make our own devices, we make our own medicine. Something to take back to the history, if you are to look at the history of Mali from 14th century to 15th century, there were these people, like you said before, there were physicians who made medicines out of these herbaceous materials such as trees and other materials or roots of the trees. Something funny, when the European came, they say that this is being primitive. This is being, your mind is not developed. Why do you think they did that? Because they had this, they had this insecurity that if Africa continued to make these medicines that actually cure disease in such a short time, they would be behind Africa. And we can still relate it right now. There are some cases where you will have cancer. Cancer to a European most of the time is very incurable. It cannot be easily cured. But here, when you come to Africa, there's some traditional medicine that can easily cure you. Malaria is not even a thing that we can talk about. It's so easily treated. So even in Europe, malaria is one of the scariest diseases they fear a lot. But here in Africa, the mosquito will bite you today, tomorrow you get some herbal medicines or traditional medicines. So African has to reflect back, use their own materials to make their own devices, and in so doing, they will become their own medicines makers, they will become their own inventors.
Yeah, talking to that one, even it is surprisingly how we are scared, we as Africans, how we are scared, even in the field of medicine. I found that our traditional medicine are very helpful in the medicine field. So it needs only direction where it can be put in education system, and then you start to teach children how to use then those traditions, and it is where we will found later an innovation throughout those traditional medicines. Yes.
Of course, innovations and creativity must be there to those young Africans and leaders, because we Africans, we are able, we can do that. And when you see what Chris says, we can do that because we have very good medicines in Africa. When you look at those minerals are being transformed in Europe are from Africa. So I think we young leaders, we are able, we are capable for that, for making something which is big for our
Colleagues, there's something that we African, we are also lagging. It's not that, like Boy said, when it comes to creativity, and she also talked about point of confidence, we do have these criteria, but there's only one problem, and this is the practicality. For example, we can talk theoretically in school, this is how we make medicine, but we're not actually going into the field to make it practical. The more you're making it practical, is the chances of you making that product to be authenticated and approved to the highest standard. So we African, we need rather to start practical education aspect rather than theory, because theory has always been there. You see your grandparents, your grandma telling you stories. That is a story, but when we need to do more of practice.
We can see we can look at why are not going to the field because of the fearness. They don't trust themselves. I think we can also look at that confidence that we are talking. So we Africans, we are able, but we are not going back to the field. Why? Because we are still fearing of that thing that the Europeans are the best. They can do more than us, whatever. So we fear to go on the field. Yet you can even see that you can say that the education is the problem, but maybe it's not the problem. Maybe it can be those who are being taught, those who are being taught, those young leaders or those students. They are not able. They are not having that confidence of going to the field to see how this and this it is being done. Yet they still think that Europeans are the best. Europeans can do more than us. So they think like, even when you look at African education, most of the young children or young students, they feel like, I wish I can go there and do this in European. They don't even likely to be here in Africa, study in their countries. They want to go back in those countries to study so that is not bad. But when they go there, do you think they can come back and they bring what they have learned there? No, they have to stay there and be like, no, so we are lacking those young leaders who are going back to the study to those Europeans, and they come back here to show up what they have learned, to show up what they have studied. So I think that can be the problem also to that.
Yes, but the matter of the fact, I think each and everyone here can then conclude giving advice to what should be done on that, why the African history is not taught.
Well, one thing that I would say that Africa need to do urgently is the issue of immigration. You see, these young African people or young African leaders, they're actually highly educated. But again, they are being exported to Europe countries. And something very funny is that they are being exported to Africa, to European countries, where now they are going to work. When you try to balance their level of education and the kind of the field or the work they are doing, it's completely imbalanced. You will find out that Europeans, they're actually having or they're earning what we call passive income. Passive income, they are there in their own houses, but money is coming in and out. But then you begin to ask yourself, how do they do this? African young people, they are highly educated, but again, they still have this tendency of feeling that Europe is better than Africa. You see, you'll find out that an African child who is in campus at year 3, and then he or she gets an opportunity of going to United States of America. Believe me or not, this person will definitely go. And you will be blinded that for him to go there is going to study. As soon as he reaches there, he will go to study he's going to start from zero level, from year 1. If he's going to study in Turkey, they'll start saying that you need to learn Turkish. You see, but what's wrong with you being here in Africa? Learn, get your degrees, get your whatever, and then start working from here. Nobody is going to change Africa if not us.
Yes, by the matter of conclusion, regarding on our motion of today, it is not, we are analyzing why the history of Africans is not taught, but it is not that we don't have philosophers or scientists in our history. It is not that they are not there. They are there, surely they are there, and even we have very super ones. However, it is the matter of what we do give value in our systems. So, and what we know. So even if you are going to search a book for reading to get that knowledge, you can even search for history. You must even search for the African books rather than going to search European books or other writers. So history, you search from the African history. Another thing, it is that we are talking about the history of Africans. we as Africans, we should be the one telling our own story. We are not going to sit there in the corner and wait for any person else to come and explain our story. So we should be the one to tell our own story. That is my end view.
In my conclusion, I can say that we African, we are able, we can do it. It's not because we lack those philosophers or mathematicians or whatever. We have them, yes, but how are they going to be known to the world globally? So I think for us, we Africans, especially young generations, we are able, we are here. We need that confidence. We need that capacity. We need that capability of knowing that we can do it. And I think we shall look at our own culture and history and match with that. So by concluding, adding on another point, I can say that we Africans, we are able, we can do it. So I think all we need is self-confidence. Yeah.
Well, we are winding up with our point. As concluding, I'll just simply say one thing. The absence of evidence is not the absence of evidence. So in this, it doesn't mean that if African history has not been written into worldwide documents, it doesn't mean that Africa has no history. So we Africa, we are the very people to start acting. And that one takes us back to the philosophy of humanity. Humanity meaning that humans are the very people who cause problems. And on the other hand, that the very people who come up with the solution. So we African, we cause the problem by letting the European take over our history. But again, we are the same people to eradicate and to combat and bring back our history through actions rather than through theory. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. Again, welcome to the Brainstorm app. Thank you.